Alright, shalom. This is Brother Kazak from the GMS Mississippi camp, and today I'm going to get into a lesson entitled, Why did Columbus bring Hebrew interpreters? Why did Columbus bring Hebrew interpreters? And this is the question I'm posing to you scoffers out there that say that the Native Americans and so-called Latinos are not Israelites. Alright? So, I mean, that just doesn't add up. Why would he need to bring men with him on his mission to so-called discover the Americas, which they wasn't discovering it because people were already here? Why would he bring men that spoke Hebrew? And I'm going to get the proof on it. All right, it's out of the book Lost Tribes and Promised Lands by Ronald Sanders. Okay, this is on page, what page is this? 93. Okay, and I'm gonna start reading right here. We do not know much concerning Columbus's crew of about 90 men aboard the 3 ships, but at least one of them was an Israelite, whose presence as such was not merely accidental. And when it says he was an Israelite, basically he was a so-called black man that still practiced the Israelite customs, because you had Israelites over in Spain, over in Portugal, and they were calling them Morenos. And the word Moreno, it means black. But those were the men that still knew they were Israelites, because you had Moors and you had Morenos. The Morenos, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, those were the men that they called them Christians, but they were Israelites. They knew that they were Israelites and they called themselves Israelites. But you had the Moors; those were Israelites that practiced Islam. So you see a lot of Moorish Negroes today. It's the same thing. But this dude, he knew he was an Israelite. Okay, and I'm reading on. It says this was Luis de Torres, a convert of possibly only that year, who had once held a position with the governor of Murcia. He was said to have known Hebrew, Aramaic, and some Arabic. So, hey man, that's plain. He knew Hebrew. So he was an interpreter for Columbus. Well, let's finish the sentence. And had been brought along by Columbus specifically as an interpreter. To interpret what? To interpret the Hebrew that the so-called Indians were speaking. That's what he was brought for. Okay, that's what he was brought for, man. To interpret the Hebrew that the Indians were speaking. Okay. All right, so gonna leave that page, and this is the other page we're going to. Now you had a man by the name of Antonio de Montesinos, and he was also an interpreter. Okay, he spoke Hebrew, and I don't know much about this man, but I believe he was a Moreno. I believe he was an Israelite from Spain. Okay, or Israelite from Portugal. It says Portuguese Moreno. Well, it says Moreno right here. You see? So he was from Portugal. All right. So because you had Israelites, you had Moors and Morenos in Spain. You had them in Portugal, and that's what Esau took us down at, man. You know, when the Renaissance came, the Borgia family, they took us down in Spain, in Portugal, in Italy. You know, they started taking down our strongholds, man. Constantinople, you know. But getting to the point, this is Montesinos speaking, and I'm gonna get to the point. And this is what he said: those Indians, he told himself, they are Hebrews. This is what Montesinos is saying, and this is a pretty long account. I'm going to read it. I'll read it anyway. Waving a banner high in the air, The Indian guide soon was greeted by a puff of smoke far beyond the other bank of the river. In response to his signal, the two men awaited. Eventually, a canoe appeared bearing 3 men and a woman, all of them Indians, to the place where Francisco and Montesinos were standing at the water's edge. The woman got off and spoke to Francisco in an Indian tongue that Montesinos could not understand. So Montesinos, he spoke Hebrew, but the Indians, they spoke a broken dialect of Hebrew. You know, they spoke a different dialect. Although he could perceive that he was being identified in the conversation. She then turned to her male companions to explain the situation. Upon hearing her words, they rose, went over to Montesinos, and to his utter astonishment, because he was amazed at this, said, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Ehod, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. They had recited in Hebrew the fundamental credo of Judaism. Now, this is Yiddish. They didn't speak this. Actually, what they were saying, they said Shemai, which means hear, Yasharallah, which means Israel, Adonai. Well, they wasn't saying Adonai. They said the Lord's name. The word Adonai, it goes back to the Hebrew Adawan, which means Lord. They didn't call him Lord. They said his name, Yahweh. So they would say Shema Yasharallah Yahweh, which is the Lord's name, the Most High's name, He to be. Eloheinu, that's his power or God. They were saying Allahayanawa, which means our God. And they said Yahweh again, not Lord, not Adonai. So Yahweh, it says Ehod, but it was Ahud. So they said Shema Yasharallah Yahweh Allahayanawa Yahweh Ahud, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. So they spoke Hebrew. Okay, they spoke Hebrew. So I mean, that's the point. Why were these interpreters brought to the Americas, man, to speak to the Indians? These men that spoke Hebrew. Now, he didn't understand it at first, but when they said this, he understood that. You know, he understood Hebrew. Montesinos, when you look him up, man. I mean, this is beautiful. When you read all this, it says they spoke Hebrew. You know, I mean, it's a lot of info in this book, man. But the point is, why did Columbus bring Hebrew interpreters? If the Native Americans, if the Latinos, you know, the Spanish-speaking brothers are not Israelites, man. All right? Because they are the Israelites, that's why. All right, so with that, I hope that was edifying. And with that, I'm going to say shalom.